Hello guys, and welcome to another Shiftaholics Subaru Forester project video. In this video we have doors, we have a bumper, and we got a hood. And we're going to be mock fitting these custom parts that we fabricated in previous episodes on our Subaru Forester. So let's get started. Now before we start assembling the front of the car, there is something I want to address first, and that is the door. If you watched any of my previous episodes, you would know that we fabricated a lot of the front end components, the body panels like the fenders, the hood, the bumper, but we've never touched the doors. So you must be curious, what's the story with the door? Not to worry, everything will be revealed in this video, so keep watching. And now that we got that out of the way, we can begin assembling the front end. And it's another beautiful day. We have the whole front of the car put together. It's looking quite sharp. However, we do have a little bit of an issue. And the issue is we are running a bit low on usable space. The problem is that with these types of projects, as I'm sure a lot of you guys know, when you have a lot of panels and bumpers, and if you're, buying 2 or 3 of everything essentially, it's going to take up a lot of room. And I know you don't see it on camera, but believe me, the garage is packed, the other garage is packed. So when I was assembling this car, I was kind of hoping that I would assemble it and that would kind of help save space. That way the bumper is not laying somewhere, the fenders are not separate, and they're not going to get damaged from me constantly moving them. But it didn't alleviate the problem completely. So I believe the only solution to this issue is to essentially finish the front end. And I know, I didn't want to do this. From the previous episode, I've mentioned it's not a good idea to paint the car while you're working on another part of the car. And that is definitely true, but I'm afraid I'm running out of options. So I am thinking perhaps the best thing I can do is paint it, assemble the front end, and kind of don't worry about it. I can cover it with plastic, something to ensure that it doesn't get scraped up while we're working on the back of the car. But at this point, this is the only solution that comes to mind. This way I can save a lot of room by, installing all of the big pieces that are not on the car yet, after the car is painted, like the grille, the splash shields, all kinds of bezels, wings that go in the front. So that will save me some space, and it will kind of alleviate the stress of constantly having to move it around and worry about breaking it, stepping over it. And so I think the best thing to do in this case is probably the wrong thing to do, but I'm going to paint the front end. I think that's the direction we have to go with this project. I mean, if I had a little bit more room and I could put this stuff in a, way and out of sight, that would be ideal, obviously. But in this case, I think the best thing is just to finish the front end, and then we can move on to other parts of the car. And the way I want to paint this car, essentially, I want to paint the whole front of the car. I'm not going to paint up to the doors. I'm going to have to blend into the doors. Keep in mind this is a two-stage pearl color, meaning that you have a base color, then you have the pearl that you have to spray separately. And because of that, just to be on the safe side, I think it's important that we blend the color into the doors. And that way, hopefully, if I do things correctly, you shouldn't see that the front end is painted. At least not. There shouldn't be any obvious signs, at least. Fingers crossed. So let's start with the hood. But before we can begin prepping our hood for paint, we have to actually wash this thing. So we got the car back in the garage in the same exact spot that it has been sitting for the last many months. It's nice and clean, and we can begin actually masking the car up and basically prepping it for paint. I think I did it again. As usual, I made a little bit of a miscalculation. And what I'm talking about specifically is this. It's not a catastrophe, there's no big deal. It's basically the strategy I picked to paint the front end is not going to work for us. We can't just blend the color into the door. That's not going to work. And for two reasons. Reason one, there's a couple of minor dings on this door. I was thinking of painting the door and then having the touchless dent wizard guy fix it. But I think might as well just fix it, do the body work, and paint the entire door. We're painting the back of the car anyway, so we're going to go all the way. done doing the body work on this door. We got rid of the 3 little dings that were on it. And it's finally time to reveal our plans for the rear quarter panels and the rear doors. And here's the plan for the back. So the passenger side rear door was damaged in the previous collision. Fairly minor, it brushed up against something, but it did manage to stretch the door. And this type of metal, it's thin but it's hard, and when it stretches it's hard to kind of get it back into the right shape. I mean, depends. If it's a dent in the center, that's not that big of a deal, but this is pretty much deformed, really deformed. So instead of spending hours on bodywork, pulling it out and stuff like that, I figured just replace it altogether. It wasn't too expensive, so I saved some time and aggravation on bodywork. There is a little bit of a caveat. The door we got does have a little bit of, it's a brand new door, but it has a little bit of a dent that happened from shipping, and it was sitting at a local body shop, and I bought it for cheap, but it's not perfect. So we do have to body work that door. That's going to take a while. So the next thing on our agenda is essentially to replace this door with a good one. And in order for us to do that, we have to first work on our new door, get all the imperfections out, and get it ready for primer and paint and all that stuff. As far as our rear quarter panels, we do have something cool in mind. We're going to take inspiration from our 2013 WRX STI and make these quarter panels wider. In fact, the rear doors as well. The whole thing is just going to puff out and look similar to the previous generation WRX. I know what you must be thinking. Why bother replacing the door if you're going to cut the bottom of the door, the damaged portion of the door off anyway? Well, you just have to watch the videos to see how we're going to implement this whole vision. And hopefully, when all's said and done, it looks just as good in reality as it does in my head right now. So let's get to it. So now that we have all of the front end panels, including the door, primed and sealed, we can begin applying the base coat. I'm delighted to report that all of the front end panels, including this passenger side door, are fully painted out. That means we applied the base coat, we applied some pearl, and we applied a bunch of coats of clear. Everything is dry now. I still didn't unpack anything, but essentially the car is ready to be put back together for the final time. No more putting things on, putting things off. We already know everything fits. We know how everything is supposed to look like, and we can begin the assembly process. I mean, there's a few minor things that we must do before we begin that process. We got to unwrap some of this stuff and do a little bit of prep work, but essentially we can move on to stage 2 and assemble the front end. Now, just to remind everyone, that doesn't mean we're done with the car. We're not done with the body. The way we're gonna do this is once we assemble the front, we're going to tape up the whole front end. We're going to make sure that it's protected so that we can begin working on our wide body rear quarter panels and doors actually as well. So let's get to it. I think I may have done it again. I have overestimated things a little bit, and I'm afraid we're not going to be able to assemble the car, not in this episode. The problem is that the clear coat is still in that stage where it's soft, where you can easily damage it, you know, especially when you're tightening screws and moving it in and out to kind of get the gap right and all that stuff. So because of that, I think the safest thing for us to do is just to wait a few days, maybe a couple of days, before beginning our final assembly of the front end. Now, I know a lot of you have been expecting the final assembly of the front end in this episode, and I was really hoping that I could do it. I could cram it all in there. However, unfortunately, it's not going to happen. But it will happen in the next episode. And not only are we going to assemble the front end, we should begin working on our rear wide body rear quarter panels and doors as well. So stay tuned. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to subscribe, like the videos, and I'll see you in another video. Bye-bye. We're going to replace the speakers too, obviously. We need something to make our ears bleed.